All right, everybody. We have Mr. Isaacs here with us. This is Mr. Isaacs from the company that we've looked at. And can you help us know how to pronounce the company? That's the first thing that we were struggling with.
Yeah, sure. Can you guys hear me okay?
Everybody at home hear him? All right, awesome. Let me
Cool.
put you through our TV here at school so that we can hear you here as well.
Well, fun. Wow, this is so cool. Yeah.
All right, so go ahead.
Cool. Hi, I'm Zach, and the proper way to pronounce it is DeBourgh. There's a bunch of weird letters in there, but it's a whole Swedish French thing. The reason that it's called DeBourgh is because the same family has owned it for 111 years, and so it's an old name that when they moved over from Sweden, they took on the name Berg. It used to be DeBourgh, and then over time we just started saying it phonetically. So DeBourgh is how you say it. Wow, this is super cool.
All right, awesome. Well, let's go ahead and kind of jump into things. I know you have some things to share with us. And like I said, everybody, this is Mr. Isaacs, and he works for DeBourgh Locker Company. So I'll have him tell you a little bit about what he does, a little bit about the company, and then a little bit about what goes into designing and building a locker. So our project for our math class is that we are designing our own lockers here, because actually this summer, Miami Middle School is going to be getting new lockers. And I believe you are one of the companies that FWCS has worked with in the past. And so we're going to be, as part of our project, our groups are going to be designing their own lockers. So we have some groups that are doing and designing hallway lockers, and some groups that are designing lockers for the PE locker rooms. And so I'll let you kind of just explain a little bit about your company and the things that you guys do there. So go ahead.
Cool. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Can you guys see that okay? Cool. Yeah, so my name is Zach, and I'm the director of marketing for DeBourgh. And basically what I do here is I do things like this, but I also do this with architects. And what we do is we work with a lot of designers to build out a space for maximum efficiency. And so the cool part about my job is that I get to travel around the world. I get to meet awesome people such as yourselves. And I wouldn't have thought that lockers would be such a big deal when I started at DeBourgh about 6 years ago. But it turns out that a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions about what lockers are and what they can be. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. The most of the content that you're going to see in this presentation is the same presentation that I give to architects and designers all over the world. So you guys are getting some pretty cool information, I think. Where I usually like to start off is, we do a lot of school lockers, and it felt for a very long time like schools all looked like this. Everyone's sitting in rows with the same desk and a couple of teachers maybe in a room that was way too small for as many students as you can see in this picture. And the reason that schools all looked this way is because the way that work used to look when everyone grew up is they were probably going to work in a factory where they needed to learn how to be in rows and understand how work would flow that way. As you know, over the last few years, we've transitioned to a much more open type of environment, much more collaborative, as you all maybe are experiencing in your school. And then, of course, for so many of us that I can even see in this screen, so now a lot of school looks like this. And so for businesses like DeBourgh and for school districts such as yours, everyone is looking at what does it take to make these spaces more functional for the students that exist. We've been around for a very, very long time, but technology is making these spaces go in a much different direction, as you all know. And I'm very excited to talk to you all about what that looks like for the future. But first, a little about DeBourgh. We are, like I said, 111 years old this year. We started out by making chicken coops, and it ended up being airplane parts for World War II. We've done a whole bunch of different stuff. But mainly we have specialized in metal, and we've sold millions and millions of lockers. For those of you that are comic book geeks like myself, if you watch Spider-Man Homecoming, you actually will see DeBourgh lockers used in that movie. And you'll get to see our number plate that shows where we are from, which is La Junta, Colorado. Our whole office, our whole factory, all of our products are American made. We use American materials. All of that comes from right here in southeastern Colorado, out in the middle of nowhere. But we ship all over the world, which is kind of cool. Fort Wayne School Districts is a longtime partner of ours. And I think you'll see some of the reasons why Fort Wayne really likes the systems that we build. So moving on, I wanted to show off some of the things that happen behind the scenes to make a locker. I think a lot of people know that a locker is a metal box that keeps your stuff safe for a certain period of time. And a lot of schools still use these every single day. Some schools, though, are looking at different ways to store things because lockers do take up a lot of space in a building. And a lot of times for a student that is using technology like a lot of you are, you may not need to go to your locker between every class like I did when I was in high school a million years ago. So how do we adjust what schools look and function like when maybe you don't need a traditional type of locker? So I'm going to talk through this video. This is actually our shop. And what you're seeing here is a turret press. This is a machine that works kind of like a printer where it takes pieces of steel and punches them out. You'll notice on a lot of lockers, they've got holes in them on the door, and that's for air to flow through the locker. These turret presses are very special, and they make those holes in the locker. This weird finger-looking thing is what we call a side frame machine, and it's this very special product that welds pieces into a frame. This is what's called a press brake, where you can form parts using really, really heavy machinery. And this is, of course, someone hand welding something into place. That's a big part of what we do is the welded lockers, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. This is how you paint our systems. And then, of course, it all starts off with some engineer putting together a design and using computer-aided drafting, using Inventor software, and building those things out using a lot of math. We expect our engineers to really understand how to build something that will work every single time. And it may not seem like a big deal, but a lot of locker systems don't work every time because the parts are not perfectly designed that we kind of strive to do. And so I would really recommend lots of math. The future is all based in coding and using these kinds of programs. And this is how you make real things. We have a lot of people that are really good at computer programming that make the real things that go into your school. Oops. So the next thing is we've got a robotic welder. Actually, we have a few of them. And I wanted to show kind of what that looks like. You're going to see some pretty bright flashes here. You have to wear a mask when you're welding, and even if you're using a robotic welder, you cannot look directly at the weld because it's very, very bright and can hurt your eyes. As you can see, even being captured on a camera, it's very, very bright. What this robotic welder does is it runs a computer program that we've designed that welds the lockers together. By welding the lockers together, you're fusing two pieces of metal to be affixed to one another permanently. What that does is it helps keep the lockers very rigid and very, very strong. And that's why the first lockers that we ever made in 1931 are still in use today in Minnesota. So they've been around for, 89 years, and they're still being used every single day. So there's two main types of lockers that are a part of what everyone understands lockers to be. There's the knockdown lockers, which you see on the left. We've exploded those parts so you can see. They are a bunch of individual parts. So for every locker, there is a top, a back, a side, and a front, and what's called a frame that someone builds on site. So this would show up in a box, and someone would build it on site with nuts and bolts. This is one of the most common in the hallway. And that's because in a hallway, you're usually trying to get a whole lot of lockers in a small amount of space. These are a lot more standard as far as color and design. You won't see something very customizable with these kinds of systems. For the welded lockers that you can see here, this is what's called a unibody locker, which means that for every unit, a whole block of lockers, they actually have one top, one back, one bottom, and everything is welded together. These are the types of lockers that last a long, long time. And this is the kind of locker that DeBourgh makes. So these are the two main types of lockers. You see these kinds of lockers, the welded lockers, a lot of times in the athletic room, because there's some angry kids that will come into the visitors' locker room and smash the lockers with a helmet or purposefully try and damage the lockers. You want stronger lockers in your athletic room usually. But for us, we oftentimes do welded lockers for the hallway as well, since that's a way for, students still are very hard on lockers even in the hallway. So I wanted to go over a couple of pros and cons for these two main types of standard lockers. Usually for a knockdown locker, there's less expense up front, which means that they're cheaper in the very beginning because they ship a lot easier. They're put in a box, and there are a bunch of different parts. And a lot of times those parts are already built. So they're sitting on a shelf ready to ship somewhere. And so they usually cost less in the beginning. And because they have those individual parts, I'm going to run back to this, because if a door got damaged, you could swap that out with another door. It is a lot easier to replace damaged parts. Some of the downsides for having a knockdown locker are that over time, they cost a lot more to maintain because they do get damaged a lot. Because they are held together with nuts and bolts, they tend to move a lot. And that means that a door may not fit in the door cavity like it's supposed to. And that means that people will replace doors, they'll replace a lot of frames. And so what we call the life cycle cost of these lockers tends to be very, very high because it requires a lot of maintenance from the custodial staff for the school district. Another downside would be that a manufacturer may discontinue a particular part. So they may change the way that they do a door, and that door may not fit with the system that you have. And so you may not be able to use a particular locker anymore because they no longer make that one part. Like I said, it's held together by nuts and bolts, and so that means that there's a lot of movement, and we'll see why that's a problem in a little bit. And also, because they show up in a box, they tend to be a lot more expensive to install because you're going part by part by part, and someone is building that in the last minute, hoping to try and get a school open on time. So for welded lockers, some of the pros are that they're considerably more durable to regular usage. They're meant to last the lifetime of the building that they go in. So they're meant to be damaged. They're meant to be pushed around, but you can't damage them. They're very, very strong. They're also built to order, which means that for a lot of schools, they want something custom for their building. They have very specific needs. You can kind of see this image in the background where a school decided they needed these shorter lockers here to have a top there that students could, put their shoes on or whatever, and also have regular lockers over here, a 3-tier. Because we don't make any lockers until they've been designed and ordered by the school district, we can make them anything. We can make them any color. We can do a bunch of different designs. And that, for a lot of schools, is something they really want. We also can maintain rigidity over longer periods of time. That's why our lockers last forever. Our lockers have a lifetime warranty on them. So if they were to be damaged somehow, or if there was a manufacturer defect where a weld popped or something, you get a whole new locker totally for free. And there's virtually no maintenance. And what that means is that when we put a locker in place, we don't want the custodial staff to be fixing lockers every summer. We think that they have other things to do. And so we tend to have very low maintenance on our lockers. We like those things to just be in place and work all the time without having to have a lot of work done on them like you might find on a knockdown locker. Some of the cons for a welded locker is that they do cost more up front for a couple of reasons. One, it does take longer to weld something together than it does to ship something completely packed down in a box. Shipping will be more because we do ship a lot of empty air since the lockers show up fully assembled, which does make them easier to install. And also, these are tremendously better products, and they do tend to cost a little bit more upfront. However, they have a much lower life cycle cost. They cost virtually nothing once you have put them in place. They are more difficult to repair. The downside is that although they are very, very difficult to damage, they show up fully welded. So it does cost more to have someone come out if they're going to weld something back into place. And another con is that a lot of people don't know the difference that I just told you about. A lot of people don't know the difference between a knockdown locker and a welded locker. So in a lot of cases, we are bidding projects with our better lockers against someone that does a knockdown locker. And for a lot of people, they don't know the difference. And so they take the cheaper price, not knowing it's going to cost them a lot more in the long run. So I've got another video here to show you a little bit of the difference between a knockdown system and a welded system. So I'm just going to play this video. I don't know why it's all scratchy. But anyway, what we do here is what we call a baseball bat test. This is our factory in La Junta. Sorry, it's jumping all over the place for some reason. I'm going to pause it for a sec. Maybe that'll help. But what we do here is we do a baseball bat test. What we do is we take our lockers and we just hit them with baseball bats to prove that no matter how hard you hit them or how often you hit them, it's still going to work like it's supposed to. This is our entire factory, and I've sped up the video because it's a lot of people hitting our locker over and over and over again on the same spot. And this is actually a softball player, and she was hitting it very hard. But you can see all the damage on the locker. You can see big dents here. And this is our director of sales, Patrick Berg. He's a very large man. And what's important here is that even though it takes a lot of damage, the door still completely operates. And of course, we had a guy in there the whole time. Not really. He was not in there the whole time. But what that shows is that when you have a welded system that's done properly, it can take a lot of damage like these tend to do in schools and still operate like they're supposed to. Compared to this poor girl, her name is Caitlin, and the story of her is that she was just moving into middle school, and she thought she needed to go to her locker in between classes, and she ended up being tardy a lot to school. She got suspended. So her parents came and took this video as to why she might be late to class.
So here we are. Caitlin's opening up her locker. Ta-da! She knows the combination. Welcome to middle school. Bottom locker that doesn't open. Come on, Jeff. There you go. Smile for the camera. Yay!
So that's pretty terrible, right? I don't think it's any mystery why Caitlin was late to class. And the reason that happened is because once a locker is in place, it tends to move a little bit, especially if it's a knockdown locker. And what that did was it changed how the door fits into the frame. And it made her locker pretty much unusable for that entire year and for every student that used that locker after her. And a lot of people will have to come in and bend parts into place, but over time, it still just moves around. So that's one of the major differences between a welded system versus a brand new knockdown system. Oops. So what are some other factors going on here? I'm going to get into some of the cool new things that lockers can do. But a lot of reasons that people are not using their lockers, as you can see over here, lockers can be damaged pretty easily, especially knockdown lockers. A lot of people don't like using their locker. They don't like going to their locker. And a lot of people don't like using the combination lock because they're really hard to use and they really can cause a lot of problems in your locker system. For students with ADA needs, students with wheelchairs or, impaired motor function, the way that lockers currently are is they're only ADA inspired. So they're not really easy to use. Lockers really aren't for everyone right now. And that's a big problem for schools because we want things to be usable by everyone on a schedule that makes sense for the user, which is you guys. There's also very little time between classes to go to your locker and then have to manage a locker that doesn't open right or a combination lock. And it's very difficult to use. And so a lot of people just bring everything they can in their backpack. And like I said earlier, there's a lot of costs in having to bend these things back into place. And as you guys know, there are some security issues with a traditional locker system. It's a place to hide things. And that's a big problem for schools that are dealing with safety and security. Lockers also are very, very loud in the hallways. A lot of people slam their lockers, and it's very loud and disruptive for people in classrooms. And as we have all been dealing with COVID, most people can't even use their lockers right now because they have to stand next to each other, and that's not in the appropriate distance. And also, it does take up a whole lot of space in the building. And maybe there's a better thing that we can do in that space. So what we're showing here is some of the new systems that we've been putting into schools. This is my son. His name is Hunter. And what he's demonstrating is using card access to use any locker anywhere in the building. So let's say that you were a cheerleader and you had cheerleading practice on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And on Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays, you didn't need to have a locker. But on Tuesdays and Thursdays, you bring all of your equipment and you need a locker that time. Well, with some of the new ideas that are kind of in place now is you would walk up to any locker that was open and you would badge into it, and that would become your locker for that period of time. And once you retrieved your backpack or your practice uniform, that locker would be open and anybody else could use that locker. So now what you're doing is you can pick any locker anywhere in the building. Since lockers or buildings are a lot bigger than they used to be, now you can pick anything anywhere. You can pick lockers by your friends for a day, or you can pick something where you're going to be on one side of the building. And the other part of this is that it's actually tied into the school's network. So a school can find out who's using what locker and where. And that gives real good feedback on how many lockers you may need for a new building. So some other ways that we're showing this is a card access. Obviously, we can do phone access or a wristband, and just going up and approaching a locker makes it yours for that period of time. One of the cool things about this is because it's tied into the building's access control system, the security system, is that schools can remotely lock down lockers in a crisis event. They can remotely open them up for inspection. So it really just allows the perfect blend of everything where it's added security and also really makes it easy for everyone to grab a locker whenever they may need it. So I've got a quick video here to show kind of this concept that I'm talking about.
At DeBourgh, we believe in improving intelligently, building on our strengths, and making life safer and more efficient where our families learn, work, and play. School security solutions still don't fully protect students past the entry point. Efficient, scalable solutions are needed at all levels, like allowing students to assign themselves lockers and access them with cards or a phone, making it easier to use any locker for any amount of time, and using your existing security system to manage the lockers like exterior doors. You can allow or revoke permission, lock down lockers, or open them remotely for inspection from central administration. Find out how these solutions work for you. Contact DeBourgh today.
Cool. So everyone loves cartoons, right? That's just one of the ways that these kinds of systems work. As far as the technology, we've covered a little bit of that, but what is storage even going to look like? Do we think that lockers are going to look the same way when everything goes back to quote unquote normal? And our stance is that no, I don't think that we're going to see a lot of the same types of lockers in the hallways or athletic areas. What storage may look like is really kind of more an interesting concept, and I'm going to show this video now.
DeBourgh's Inbox Modular Intelligent Network is the latest innovation in flexible storage, offering unprecedented customized security. With Inbox, smart storage has been made easy. Stackable, modular, and connected, Inbox transforms into any variety of cabinets, desks, lockers, tables, stands, or benches, configured to your exact needs. Inbox features every level of access control, ensuring better safety and resource management with optional touchless systems, real-time data, audit trails, and charging stations, all with a simple user interface. Its wireless network brings unmatched interchangeability and mobility, allowing you to rearrange your system while retaining your smart space capabilities. Inbox's unique welded steel construction is durable and integrates with many locking solutions, providing the only hybrid system that can also be finished in metal, plastic laminate, phenolic, and high-density polyethylene for the ultimate in personalization. To learn more on how to define your ideal space, contact DeBourgh today.
There's a whole bunch of big words there, but basically what this idea is it's lockers like Legos, right? Where you have these cubes that can stack up and restack anytime. You can take the assemblies and change them around because they're just boxes. And the concept is, we thought a lot about what are people even storing today? And a lot of the same things came up, like cell phones, laptops, short periods of time where you have a purse or you have your wallet or your cell phone that you drop in for athletic classes. So what we wanted to do was create something that just made a lot more sense for modern environments. And this is a COVID space that we actually designed for a school where there are no lockers in the hallway. The lockers are a part of the furniture in the classroom. What that does is allows for schools to have a much bigger distance between desks, which is kind of a pretty important part of how we go to school and how we go to work today. What this does is it helps you build smart furniture by integrating with the access control system and gives you the ability to have storage in your workspace so that you could badge into a particular opening, and that's your desk for that period of time. And you can build all different sorts of stuff. Things like what we want to build is the storage of the future. What we think it's going to be is it's going to be storage for everyone wherever they are. It's going to be easy to use. It's going to be scalable. What that means is that used to be that we would get 1,000 lockers for a building, but maybe you only need 10. Maybe you only need a section of 20 at different points of your building. It's going to be a lot smaller footprint, but it's going to be more usable because of the technology. It's going to be a lot more flexible that you've just seen some of the furniture that we've been able to build out of just making these things into boxes. It's going to be a lot more secure. It's going to be really strong still in the way that we build the boxes, but also it's going to be integrated with the building's security system. And it has to be affordable. Schools are looking at a lot of ways that they can save the most money to give you guys the best education possible. So it has to make sense for a school to be able to buy smaller amounts of these lockers. We also have to make sure that these are available for everyone for the building. They have to be accessible. They have to be able for someone that has impaired motor function to be able to walk up and just badge into a particular opening, and that's their locker. And perhaps not have handicap stickers on there. Maybe they're just lockers for everyone because every locker is the same thing. What else? We're going to start to see a lot more antimicrobial coatings. Obviously, with COVID, what a lot of people are looking at is how their building hygiene practices impact how people's health is in the building. the paint that goes on these lockers can also help prevent the growth of what we call microorganisms, which are basically stain and odor causing bacteria. And this helps keep a building much more sanitary as we look at our cleaning practices and trying to make sure that less people get sick. Overall, we think that the new future of storage is a smarter space by improving the security, the flexibility, and the user experience for you guys and for the faculty of a particular building. That was a whole lot of information that I tried to give you very, very fast. I'm excited to hear what your questions may be.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you so much, Mr. Isaacs, for sharing with us a lot of information that I think is really helpful. I think it's really cool because I don't know what group in this class, as they were talking about some ideas, right? We're just kind of in the idea stage of designing our lockers. There was a group in this class that talked about how can we because we don't need all the lockers that we have, so how can we have some in the locker space that we have? How can we have like seating maybe, or like an area where students can sit? I don't know, that was a group in here, right? Braden, it might have been your group that talked about that. And that was just really, really cool. So it's like you're already kind of moving that direction to where our students have kind of been talking. So maybe they could get a job at your company here, maybe coming up soon.
Love it.
I don't know.
I would love it.
Yeah, so we're already kind of thinking of some of those design ideas. So it's really cool to hear some of those design ideas that you guys are implementing into the locker future. So thank you so much. Let's go ahead and pause right here though with everybody, because I think what's really cool is Mr. Isaacs shared with us a lot, and we want to thank him for his time before we get into questions. So I think we should all give Mr. Isaacs a round of applause or a 10-finger woo. What do you guys think? 10-finger woo? All right, let's give Mr. Isaacs a 10-finger woo on 3, everybody. 1, 2, 3, woo!
Ooh, I like that. I like that.
So
on our calls, what we do
woo.
is we do a high five. See, watch.
High five, yeah, air high five. All right. So we do have some questions. I'm going to start out with a few questions from some students that aren't in our Zoom right now.
Okay.
Elias was wondering if some of the lockers that are being built have a way of opening from the inside. You know how like a lot of cars have trunks that can be opened from the inside. Are lockers designed in that way? And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think currently there's not a lot of locker designs that do that. And I think that's come up in a lot more conversations in recent years as we've seen a lot more bullying be a bigger part of the conversation. And, I think that the notion of putting a kid in a locker is something that a lot of times is really just from the movies. But what I would recommend is why would you really need a locker that's big enough for a person? I think the way that these kind of go forward is the devices that we're storing our laptops and tablets and cell phones. And if you can fit into one of those openings, that's kind of cool. And maybe make a career out of that.
Sure. And then Swa was wondering, and I think you kind of already answered this, Swa was wondering why the lockers traditionally have like a spin lock with the numbers. And that's the style of locks that we have here at Miami. But what's the history behind that style of lock? And I guess with the lockers of the future, we're not necessarily locked into that. But where's that all where did that design idea come from originally?
Yeah, for sure. So I think that there's a cultural impact of this kind of lock because it used to be padlocks were the main type of lock. But padlocks are removable, and that can create situations that are potentially dangerous. We worked with a school that down in Tucson that kids were using the padlocks as weapons. And so obviously the advent then was to create a built-in lock. And what that meant was you had to have a lock technology that could be built in, and that's where the built-in combination lock comes from. And that's where you get the ability for a lot of different latch types to be able to slam the door and look really cool. And really the reason that that has taken off and is really kind of all over the place is because those are very cheap locks. They cost very little. And so many schools are looking at budget crunches all the time, and every dollar that they can save means dollars they can invest in your curriculums, or bringing in really great teachers or great education programs. And so from my perspective, I do think that the future of locks are going to go away from the combination locks and go towards these a lot more expensive technology locks. But the trade-off is you don't really need as many lockers if everybody can get whatever locker is available.
All right, and then we have, let's see, a couple of other questions. Ong was wondering about all the different types of configurations, but I feel like the video that you showed us, and you kind of talked through a lot of that with the lockers of the future. So I think that's awesome, some of the different design ideas, and hopefully that gives some of us here at Miami, some of our groups, some things to kind of think about with the configurations of the lockers and how all that fits together.
For sure.
Mohammed was wondering, besides lockers, are there other things that your company manufactures?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So what we really do is we shape and paint and weld metal, and there's all different kinds of things that can be made of that material. And so we do primarily do some kind of metal enclosure. But what those look like can be very different from what we call vertical segments of markets. So we do a police station type of storage. We have industrial storage for chemicals or for really heavy equipment. We do asset tracking storage for businesses that have really expensive equipment that they need to track. And we do a lot of storage for the military. The Army has to have deployable storage systems so that they can come in with a forklift and grab that system and move it over to Europe or wherever they're going. And so we all do metal enclosures, but I think that what you would consider a locker, we consider to be a version of a metal enclosure, and we do a lot of metal enclosures.
Sure. All right, and then so Marissa here is wondering, does the key card lock that you showed in as one of the examples, does that work with every locker? So I think what her question is, what's the logistics of how that keypad, that swipe card works with the lockers?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So normally in schools that have an access control system, your student ID is your badge. And so for a lot of schools, they are trying to limit the people that can come into their building. And so, for example, if you were to walk up to the front door, you might use your student ID to badge into the building. That creates a record at administration saying, hey, this person's in the building today. Then you would walk to your next class, and what you would do is you would say, oh, I've got to store my running shoes for PE after this class, and I want to store that. I don't want to bring it into the classroom. And so what you're going to do is you'd walk up to any locker that was available, and there's usually like a light that says if it's in use or available. And basically you would just swipe your card and it would beep, and then you would put your stuff into that locker and you would close it. And that locker would be yours using your card technology, which is it's an RFID number that is very unique to your personal card. And then when you were done with that class and you're ready to go to your gym class where you need your running shoes, you would walk out and you would badge into that locker. It would pop open, you would get your stuff, and then that locker would be available for anybody else that had a card. Does that make sense?
Does that make sense, Marissa? Awesome. Very cool. So much like my ID badge that I have for school, and I know these guys all just got their school pictures taken this week, and when we get those ID cards back, I think he's saying that those ID cards can be used as so there's no need to remember a combination. There's no need to do any kind of combination on your locker. You just swipe your badge, just like this lets me in the building. It would let you guys into an open locker So I think that's a really cool idea. So maybe some of them will incorporate that into their designs and into their lockers.
For sure.
And then do you maybe have a second? I think we had a group that wanted to kind of bounce their idea off of you, their design idea. So Braden, why don't you go ahead and show him.
I will get the thing up. I gotta show him the picture.
Okay.
Let me just get.
So he's going to share his screen with you, I believe.
And I can't do it.
Yep, I just opened it up for you. You're good.
Okay, let me just.
All right, while he's pulling that up, let's have you, let's see, I think there was another question. Crystal, can you explain your question a little bit? You were wondering about the safe buttons. What do you mean by the safe button? Oh, like instead of the spinny locker or instead of the ID badge, is there a style of lock where you can push certain buttons, like a number pad almost? Are those style of locks something that you've done with lockers before?
Absolutely. What we call those is a pin pad lock. And so there's a lot of different styles. The cool part about those locks are that, they're still multi-user and you can pick whatever your code is for any given amount of time. A couple of the downsides are, one, they tend to work on batteries and that can still create some maintenance issues. And two, you'd be surprised how many people forget their 4-digit code by the time they get out of class, and they end up having to go to administration. And because these are not on a network like the access control locks, someone has to physically go to that lock and open it up with a master code. And so they are very common in like athletic areas and in like fitness clubs and things like that, where people aren't going to forget their 4-digit code very easily. But in a lot of schools, a lot of people do forget their codes, but they do exist for sure.
Awesome. I think it's still loading. So
No problem.
he's getting it though. Well, since we're on kind of that topic of the different styles of locks, so obviously we have the spin kind, the touchpad kind, the swipe badge. What are some other style of locks that are available to use, or maybe that you guys haven't necessarily used but have seen out there?
Yeah, so those are the main types, but another cool lock that I really like is called a mechanical multi-user lock. And what that is it looks like a combination lock, but it's also, anybody can pick any code for that. So it's got some spinny dials on it. And the cool part is it's alphanumeric. So basically what that means is when I went up to a locker, I would pick a code like, let's say Z1, because that's my initials, right? And that would be my code for that particular class period. And then when I'm done, I spin the dial and then it clears the code for the next person. So it's easier to remember. And because it's mechanical, there's no battery involved at all. And so those are a pretty good way of having the multi-user function and not have to do a battery or a pin code, and being able to use a really strong metal lock with one of those. I wonder if I've got one somewhere. I've got some in here somewhere, but yeah. A mechanical multi-user lock is another one that we're starting to see a lot more of.
Sure, very cool. So that's another option as you guys are thinking through that. All right, Brayton, are you ready? Brayton? All right, so talk us through kind of your idea, Brayton, and what you guys were thinking.
Okay, let me just get the picture up. And there. Okay, this is my locker with me and Brayton.
All right, so talk us through what we're looking at and what we're seeing, Brayden.
So you can see this is what it looks like in the locker, but the circle thing, that's a circle pad, like dial thing. And I'm also thinking we can have interchangeable locks. You can have a circle pad, this, or a number pad.
Mhm.
So talk to us about that, because you had your specific idea that made your guys' locker unique in your brainstorming is that bottom drawer.
Yeah,
Explain that a
bottom,
little bit.
yeah. So the bottom drawer, like if your locker is like a bit full and you can't place your computer anywhere or books, place it in that bottom drawer.
Yeah. No, that's
All
cool.
right, so there you go. So what are your thoughts, Mr. Isaacs, kind of on that? Because I think that drawer for the technology. So I don't know. Are you guys thinking like that there would be padding in that to kind of protect the device, or?
Yeah, I think I was gonna say, you know, the cool thing is you've kind of designed a school version of what we sell to police officers, where they've got a pull-out drawer underneath a locker that they can store their boots and stuff in. But what is really cool about this design, which I really like, is that you have two different locking mechanisms. So you don't necessarily need to open up your whole locker to be able to access a part of the locker. So maybe you're coming by and you just want to pull something out of the drawer. You can just do that. I really like that aspect of it. Would recommend having some kind of charging station within the drawer, which would allow you to charge your devices while you were in class or while you were in PE, or maybe you need to charge your cell phone while you're in class because you can't bring your cell phone into class. That's a really cool design. I really like that.
Yeah, and I think it just was very unique, and I like the idea of having that extra space, because it is more, you know, thinking about the function, especially moving into the future. Because when we talked to Mr. Evans last week, he mentioned that, you know, when FWCS gets new lockers, we're really looking at having those lockers for the next 50 years. And so thinking 50 years down the road. So I'm sure a lot of the schools that you guys work with are thinking 50 years into the future, and that those lockers are going to be the lockers that they have for a while. So how are you guys as a company thinking in the future in that way?
Yeah, you know, we have so many lockers that have been around for 50 or 60 years. What we're doing now to work with those customers is that we actually have the ability to retrofit our existing lockers and turn them into smart lockers. So that's one way that we're doing that now for our customers that have been around for 50 years. And I think that by using the Inbox product, what we're hoping to develop is some universality, right? The ability to be anything, anywhere, in any space. We know that many schools are going to be facing some budget crunches, and what that means is that we need to be more available for for a space. Hoping that you're going to get a renovation or get a whole new building may not be on the table. And so what we want to do is we want to make something that is movable, that you can put on wheels and move around. Because who knows what schools are going to look like 50 years from now. And so having something permanently affixed to your building is one of the ways that we're helping people make those decisions for the next 50 years by making things mobile, making things more integrated with technology. We think that those are going to be big factors in the next 50 years.
Awesome. And then we have one last question. I know we've taken a lot of your time, and we really appreciate that. And we really appreciate your expert advice on this. So our last question comes from a student in another class, but he was wondering, what are some of the biggest things that break on a locker? So as you work with schools, and you talked about, you know, the different repairs that happen on a locker, what is the most common thing that breaks?
That's a really good question. So first and foremost, I would say that most commonly the lock is what breaks. So a lot of times people will call us and say, hey, we've got some locker problems. And usually those are actually lock problems. And there's a couple reasons for that. One, if any moving parts on a rigid object tend to be the first that fail. So we have a lift latch that you can slam. Because those are moving parts and because there's nylon latch clips, they tend to break a lot. So really anything that is moving on the locker. This is why you really would like a welded locker system, because in a knockdown locker system, the locker itself will move. And that means the locker becomes pretty unusable about 2 years into its life cycle. So usually it's any moving part in the locker system. and usually it's also the lock that tends to fail first.
All right, thank you. So as we wrap our time up, again, I want to thank you so much for your time and your expertise in helping us with this project. Is there anything else that you want to add or any parting words that you have for us?
You know what? I really appreciate this opportunity to be able to talk to you all. You guys are super awesome, and we certainly love Fort Wayne Community Schools. One of our managers is actually going out to your district in a couple of weeks. We love going out there. I was just there last fall. It's a great area. We love that school district, and we hope to continue to work with you all. And obviously, if you have any other questions or any other ideas and you'd like to pick my brain a little bit, you can get with your teacher, and he's got my email, and I'm totally available. I'd love to talk to you all.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We'll keep that in mind as we progress through this project. So one more time, everybody, well, I'll unmute you this time. Let's give him a 10-finger woo for all of Mr. Isaac's time here. Everybody on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you,
Love
Seth.
That should be good. I'm out.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And you have a wonderful day out there.
You guys too.
All right.
Thank you.